Hello everybody. This is our first showing for 2010 for the Voices of Women of Color. We want to say hello to everybody and wish you a good start for the new year. We have decided, after doing the data collecting for the past 2 years, working with Drug Policy Alliance, A Better Way Foundation, that the Voices of Women of Color 2 issues will be education and women in incarceration, specifically women of color. Now let's deal with the issue of women of color. We had some mishaps last season. Women of color is a very broad band of women of color. That does not mean just black women. That means Peruvian women, Mexican women, Asian women, whatever woman that's under that color, Puerto Rican women, Venezuelan women, Brazilian women. Do you get where I'm going with this, everyone? So we are a group that not only embrace all women of color, but we like to believe that our work liberates all people, oppress people. And so to that degree, we don't shut out anyone. Okay? But our frank and candid conversation, this show, is specifically for women of color. It is a space in which we get together, a safe space, as one community and one voice for the liberation of all oppressed people. That is our mission statement. That's what we live by. We welcome you here today, and we hope that you all enjoy what we have in store for you. I have a dear friend, a mentor, an author, a writer, an activist, a grassroots organizer. I'll let her go ahead and say all the rest of the stuff. Well, no, I won't. Come here, Kayla. Kayla is a big fan, and she is one of the young voices of women of color. And she has done her research, so I'm not going to steal her shine. I'm going to let young voices go ahead and take a few minutes out and tell us who Asha is. Do your thing.
Asha Banzel, a New York native, is a well-known poet and author. She is editor-at-large for Essence magazine. She is the author of The Prisoner's Wife, a memoir, Absence in the Palms of My Hands, which is a poetry, and many others. She has earned degrees from the New School of Social Research and Bennington College. She is known for performing her own work, which she has performed at juvenile detention centers, churches, and Deaf Poetry Jam. While attending the City University of New York, Asha became a campus activist, participating in a sit-in which resulted in her being expelled. Asha, which is new to me, but after watching her performance on Deaf Poetry Jam, I can see her passion and her talent and her skills and what she does. It is my honor to introduce to you Asha Banzel.
Thank you. It's such, I always love coming to Hartford. You know, the thing is, often when we are in what we call oppressed communities, and you know, we should be mindful of this as the tragedy is occurring in Haiti, and people have talked so much about the poverty of that nation. What they don't talk about is how culturally rich it is. They don't say it's the only nation born of a slave revolt. People have been angry at them because they've been a free black people since 1801. And so sometimes when I think about us, and I think about, you know, all the weight that black people in America live by, I think about also how culturally rich we are. And every time I've come to Hartford, it's always felt like home. And it's always been home. I brought my daughter here the first time, which is the one thing in any introduction, if you do not say she is Nisa's mother,
Yes.
I am going to get in trouble.
Yes.
You should take away every book, everything, but I am Nisa's mother first and foremost. Trust me on that.
Yes.
You want to have that in everything you say. But, you know, Hartford's always welcomed me, and here at Hartford, you know, there's so many challenges that are faced, and I first started working out here through the Drug Policy Alliance, which is the leading organization fighting the war on drugs, and believing that while none of us want our children to do drugs, we also know that the ways in which they've erected policy is doing far more harm than good. And I've been talking with Janice about some of the work that you're doing and why that even though you're working locally, it has a national effect. And one thing I do want to say, as Caleb was mentioning, was that when I was a student at Hunter College, the way that I became working on issues of prison reform was what was happening at that time at the City University of New York, which is the third largest university system in the United States, second only to the State University of New York and the California system, which is the largest. But at all three of these schools, which educate more Black and Latino young people than all of the HBCUs combined, okay? So this is our school. Was that money was being taken out of public higher education, and almost to the exact dollar amount being put into prison building. And that happened in New York, and it may have been true at the same time in California, though I can't swear that, but it certainly happened in New York under a very democratic, liberal governor, Governor Mario Cuomo. We had this exponential growth. A huge reason for that growth was the drug war. So that we sit here now with the dubious distinction of having 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the prison population. In this country, we incarcerate more people for drug law offenses, non-violent drug law offenses, than all of Western Europe, which has a larger population, does for all crimes combined. And so one of the things that brought me into doing this work was I could see the relationship between my passion, which was, you know, set the captives free, and what the drug war was doing. And I wanted, and especially because the idea that if somebody has an addiction issue, which, let's face it, everybody in America does. Yes. I don't care if it's marijuana, I don't care if it's heroin, I don't care if it's McDonald's French fries, gambling, or now we learn through Tiger Woods, sex. Yeah. Everybody got an addiction up in this bad boy. It's a rough country to live in. Yes. Some people addicted to religion. Yes. Right? You talk to some people and they can't say anything out their own mouth. It's all a quote. That's right. Right? And it's insane. So the idea that you take what is essentially a health contradiction, right? Because if you overdo anything, take it out of moderation, because it's a health contradiction, and take it out of the public health sphere and put it in the criminal justice sphere, has not, A, lowered the addiction rates, it hasn't made people healthier, and with women of color, what is especially important to know is that it hasn't made our communities safer, which is what many of these laws pretend to do, whether it's school zone laws. You know, we don't want the drug dealers around our kids. And everyone say, yeah, right, not me either. No one's going to say that. But in the 80s America, when they started removing black men from our communities, unlike maybe a small white community in Iowa where we have the one little renegade bad boy who robs everybody's house, you take him, you put him in jail, the community's safer, nobody's house robbed, everyone's leaving their door open again. Yeah. The exponential removal of black men started to make our communities less safe, because you had, now even if they weren't like, you know, the total innocent guy, he's a little rough around the edges, we all know that brother. Yeah. He still was the one who could regulate some of them youngins, right? It was still the one, everybody knows that person who maybe did a little time in a gang or whatever, you know, comes out, matures a little bit, and regulates the young boys coming up, right? So when you add to that what is being done to black women primarily because of the drug war, the chaos that it's left our communities in as children are shifted into group homes, foster homes, or even if they're with a grandparent who, they're like, I'm 80, I did this already, right? And doesn't have the money, the energy to be running around behind some teenager, and so the parental levels are not always there as they might have been. So the removal of black women has completely destabilized our communities. And I don't care if it's here in Brooklyn where I live, whether it's in Oakland, whether it's in LA, wherever it is, Atlanta, that's what's happening. And the same stories will be told wherever you go. That's why your work is national. You're doing your work locally, but it is a national story and it's a national question. And so I'm really happy to be here to talk about my own history in doing organizing. I really want to know what's happening here and what you both need from an organization like Drug Policy Alliance, which is a national, has a national view, and I run their grants program. So I have the fortune of being able to see people from all over the country. Because sometimes we do get in our little worlds, and a little circle, not little neighborhoods, and it's safe and it's comfortable. I like that. I like being in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? But seeing what people are doing across the whole country, it broadens it makes me like more of a citizen of the world, and a citizen of the world that I want to be. So even if I never thought about this issue, you know, whatever issue it is, once I talk to somebody, like I can remember after Katrina, and I did a lot of work in New Orleans after Katrina, what happened with, there's such a thing as, for only people who have drug law offenses, for example, what's called the TANF bans. The TANF bans are temporary aid to needy families. And if you have a drug law offense, you know, you can't get Section 8 housing. I don't know what they call it in Connecticut. New York is Section 8 housing, food stamps, all these kinds of things. If you live in the projects, you get thrown out. Now, New Orleans did not do that, right? But when all those people got moved to Houston, they were subject to now not being allowed, if they had a family member in the house, of not getting state money, because now they've been relocated there. I watched with my own eyes families come apart. I watched one man sink back into depression and addiction. I watched it. It was one of the most heartbreaking things. I could see the family coming undone, because where in New Orleans, he had access, not only just access to treatment, but he had access, and that's at that time, post, you know, pre-2005 New Orleans, but he also could get a job. Now he gets here, right, and he, you know, they ask him on his employment, do you have a conviction? And he's like, yeah, and it keeps him from getting jobs, and then it destroys the family. He starts fighting. Maybe he hit his wife. I'm not sure everything that happened, but I watched that family dissolve. And those are the kinds of things that I think that we need to look at. Is like, what are the direct ways, we are the real world consequences of this bad policy. A lot of times we talk about politicians and the way it happens, we think it's something out there. But they make decisions that you are affected by every day, whether or not we realize it. And that's why the work is so important, to come together and talk about it, so we can see how, you know, I have a voice that counts. So when you talk about, you know, so many of these things, when you talk about the way the drug laws have kept people from being able to vote, you now have fully 30% of black men in the Deep South unable to vote. What that means specifically is that had they been able to vote, you not only wouldn't have gotten George Bush as president, you would have had a fully Democratic Congress since 2000.
Well, let's even bring it more local than that, right? Because in my trainings, I say, well, let's check. How many of us, or anybody in here lived in public housing? Raise your hand, right? All right. And at some point, right, how many of us had somebody in our family who was an ex-offender or locked up or whatever, right? All right, all of us, right? Yeah. Now, one of the trainings we do in our trainings around housing is, then I say to the women like this, right? That man did not love you, right? That man was an ex-offender that was in your life, and you lived in public housing. Therefore, you could not be a family. He can't marry you because you got to live in this house with your kids, and public housing state that an ex-offender can't live with you, whether it be your brother, whether it be your sister. And when we say live, we talking about not shacking, right? Where he feels like he's a part of it. His name is on the lease.
But where's your, when it's your son?
Or your son.
You have to make a choice between your children, like they did in Nazi Germany. Which one you want?
Which one?
Which one you want. So then you send that boy out into the shelter when he comes home, maybe at 17, still not able to live on his own. This is your son.
Your son. And
you cannot have him around, because your other children will be put out of housing and you'll be put out of housing.
Barbara, how is it, you know, Barbara Fair is a long time activist in this work, and she and I were in Albuquerque. We actually have been to a couple of DPA conferences together, and I'm always impressed with the level of involvement and the knowledge that Barbara brings to the drug policy work and around understanding incarceration. And I was just wondering, in New Haven, are the women of color, you know, really starting to like have these conversations about incarceration and how it's affecting them in the state of Connecticut, specifically too around drug zones? Because ladies, just so you know, that's going to be when the Voices of Women of Color talk about women in incarceration, we see the drug zone as part of a connection of that. So pay attention to that policy and those bills that's going to come down, and don't be surprised when you get a call from the Voices of Women of Color asking you to call your elected officials
to abolish them.
To
abolish them.
Those. Go ahead, Louise.
Well, because what the drug-free school zone law does, it's not just about capturing drug dealers, right? A lot of drug dealers are not being captured by it. A lot of users are being captured by it. And then you see kids whose mother or father, you know, pick up something, and then the undercover cop is busting down their doors, ripping that family apart. And so what it does is that it's like a cage that catches all the users and disrupts families, right? That's one thing. And it's also racially disproportionate. That's another thing. But the political thing is it reduces political power in those cities and towns that are all school zones, like New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, New Britain, Waterbury, Norwich.
Yeah.
You know, and it's also in rural Connecticut as well. Their school zones may be wide, but their kids is dying of overdose deaths, right?
Yes.
Because they're dying in barns because there's no services. Well, because their parents have money, right, and insurance, they take up the services that are here locally in Hartford and New Haven, right? And why our people go straight to jail because they're surrounded by a school zone. So a kid, you can have a joint, and then you sitting in your living room right here. This is a school zone.
Yeah.
So the cop come knocking on the door. We all going to jail for a school zone.
Yeah.
And that carries a mandatory of 2 to 3 years. And we saying we got 2 laws that protect our kids if you try to sell to them or get them to sell for you, right? That's the laws we want to keep.
That's the law.
Because we're trying to protect our families. But the school zone law is not a law. For the last 40 years it's been an act. It's been in existence longer than that, right? All the way back, it goes back to Roosevelt. But what it does is it breaks down our ability to get the help we need.
So,
and a lot of the white people too, just one more thing, a lot of white people too also have lawyers that know that if you bring it to trial, the judge has the ability to throw it out. Our people don't know that because the public defender ain't telling them that.
That's right. Well, they gonna know now because we gonna put this thing
out. But if you say, I'll take that to trial, all of a sudden, they ain't gonna be incarcerated for 18 months. $56,000 or more a year is spent on incarcerating one person. That can put 3 new Hartford High School kids in college for a year. Going to a community college to get their associates. 3 of them for one person who can be in treatment instead of being incarcerated. 3 of our kids can be going and getting a higher education, which will flourish our communities.
So how about in New Haven? Are women having this conversation?
Well, we've tried having conversations around drug policy for years now. It's just always, for me, it's difficult and frustrating that it's hard that the people that were impacted the most by these drug policies are the ones who don't come out. And so that's the most frustrating thing. We've had the conversations though, but getting people to feel that they can do something about it, that's what's missing. When we go to Hartford to help support legislation that we want to get passed, very few black people are coming to Hartford with us.
So on this side of the room, Barbara just made a very bold statement, right? And why do we think that is, like, especially given that, the information we have now, right? Not only are men being locked up, but we're being locked up too, right? We had some Latino women who was coming tonight who can't get out of work. One facing 15 years because her house got kicked in and some other stuff going on. The other one is facing 25 years because of some other stuff going on. And both of them have husbands or boyfriends or loved ones, kids, fathers who are ex-offenders. So when these bills like Drug Zone and Ban the Box and bills that impact women of color specifically, why don't we come out to the Capitol? What's going on with that, Brandy?
I think a lot of us is out there doing the man's job. We out there working. We out there with the kids. We out there grocery shopping. We
paying
doing it
the
all.
bills.
Yeah,
everything.
we doing it all. You know what I'm saying? So it is a struggle to get that 15 minutes to run in here, try to listen, try to work with the people and still try to go home and cook dinner and do homework and, you know what I'm saying, we by ourselves. That's one of the reasons. That's mostly one of my problems.
I think another reason is that a lot of our women just don't want to come out, period, because I can be out, I can hand people a lot of flyers and tell them what's going on, and they'd be like, well, I can't do that. But then you sitting home, but you can get that 40.
But is it linked to what Brandy's saying?
Yeah, because, it is linked.
Go ahead, Asha.
I want to, you know, and I know that that's a frustrating thing, and when we go back, I'm somebody who, you know, Malcolm X said, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And so for me, that's always what it is. And I think that what's so important, you know, especially as we're celebrating Martin Luther King's 81st birthday and we're looking at the violence in Hartford, we know the answer. He calls it the beloved community 50 years ago, right? So we know the answer. And here the answer was something that was done by a brilliant group of young people called the Black Panther Party.
Yes.
And what they did in New Haven and what they did across America was that they didn't necessarily go in starting with, here's how you change policy. They started with the breakfast program.
That's right.
They started with a sickle cell clinic.
That's right.
Basically, you know what I mean? There were so many other ways, and I think sometimes when we go in to organize, you know, we want to go in headlong with the issue that we're, you know, we're passionate about. We want to go right in, and we're going to hope that people are on the very same page as we are. And if I just tell them, ba 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 ba, they're going to jump to it. But that's not often how people are. And I so agree. I can almost feel, you know, Brandy, in your voice, that emotion when you say we doing the man's job, you know, because, you know, my husband was in prison, he just got out September 14th, you know, was deported, but for all those years, you know, I was with him since 1990 until, you know, he came home. And, you know, I have a daughter with him. And there came a point where I couldn't go up anymore. I said, listen, I'm making a choice. I have to choose my daughter because I can't have, you know, one day of the weekend to work full time, which I never had done in my life till I had a baby and realized, oh, I gotta like pay taxes and all that stuff, right? And I got insurance, all the stuff you gotta do when you're a mother.
Yes,
I'm legitimate. You're not just a poet, right?
Legit now.
All right, so I had to get a job.
Yes. No more just a struggling.
Exactly. No more like, oh, $50 for a week. No, I'm good. You know, no more because the kid wants stuff. And I eventually had to make a decision not to go up there anymore because A, it was so blasted expensive, right? And B, I would be so drained. I would have one day on the weekend to do everything else. So I think a lot of times as organizers, like the best way is to come in through the side door.
That's right.
You know, coming through the, you offering the Breakfast for Children program that we now see in public schools. I mean, some of it started in the church, but it was really the Black Panther Party who did this. And so, and most of the answers that we have are in our own texts, they're in our own history books, and they're there. You know, so I would say a lot of times, you know, when I think about when we're doing drug policy work, and I know it's hard to get up in the Deep South and talk about, you know, drugs and stuff, you know, especially when, you know, black people are conservative. We, you know, we have the label of liberal, but it's just not true. We like the most conservative people I know.
Yes.
And I, you know, like you, salam alaikum, says, come from a black Muslim community.
Yeah.
All right? I'm not a very good one, obviously, but, you know, very conservative, very pious community.
Yes.
All right? And, you know, so it's very hard to talk about these things. So sometimes
we accept everything.
Right? I'm like, that's not my mother.
Yeah.
I don't know whose mother that is, but it's not mine.
Yeah.
It's not my daddy. You know what I'm saying? We'll be liberal on some stuff, but, you know, that's not really who we are socially. And so it's like coming in the other way where you provide services for people.
Exactly. How about in the Muslim community? I'm pretty sure you are being impacted. But around women, are there, like, do you see women who are having gone to prison and having some issues around housing and their children? Are you seeing that or no?
I'm not sure. I know I see a lot of Muslims going to visit husbands.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's the other way. Okay.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
My name is Carla.
It's like a meeting. Hi, Carla.
I'm Carla. I'm one of the Voices of Women of Color. Even when your family is incarcerated, they still make it hard for y'all to unite because it costs an arm and a leg for them to call you. Buses don't go there because they're miles and miles away. So even in the prison system, they're still breaking our families apart.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're still breaking them apart. So what can we do in order to change some of the things of people being incarcerated, like our family members or our husbands or our mothers or our sisters or our sons? Especially with the effect of children, because a lot of children are affected by their parents or their brothers or their sisters when they're incarcerated.
But
You
we've
know
been
what I'm saying?
finding cases where the mother, the father, and the child was an ex-offender.
It's an ex-offender.
No family.
So basically, us women of color, once they break up our family, it's hard to put that family back together
That's right.
because they constantly keeping you separated.
Yeah.
So that's something else we have to think about. I feel as though women of color, if you're not even working, we should all volunteer, do things, get out the house, volunteer at the school, at a soup kitchen, help an old lady across the street, sign up people to register to vote.
Let me challenge you on that.
Challenge me.
Just a little bit, because I know how it feels sometimes when I'm doing this community work and I get overwhelmed and I'm feeling like, you know, no matter how hard we work, things ain't changing, it ain't working, and I can't get off my couch for 3 or 4 days. So does that mean that I really don't care? Does that mean I'm not involved? Or is it okay to say I need a break from everything?
Well, I think that black women have probably the greatest history of service and volunteerism in this nation ever. We have built almost every church.
Yes. Keep
You know,
all this charitable giving.
so I think that when people, you know, talk about that, I mean, those things are reality. Other reality, you know, for black women is depression. You know, one of the best definitions I heard of depression was in a book called The Noonday Demon by a young white man, Andrew Solomon, I think his name, and he said depression is the absence of love.
Yes.
And when I think about, you know, it's deep, right? When I think about a group of people who have been publicly vilified, whether it was, you know, welfare queen, baby mama, hoe. You know what I mean? I'm just like, publicly, no other women have these titles. Just going down the list, right? By everybody, including by our own men.
Yep.
And so, you know, that level of depression, which again is where an ethic of service comes in, and it's where, too, as organizers, a great place like that we need to challenge is in our places of worship. What are they doing?
Yes.
You know, because they have that pulpit every Sunday. Because you know, people won't make it off the couch, won't take a shower all week, will make it to service on Sunday.
Right.
They will make it to service on Sunday.
Yeah, so how are they being held accountable?
And how are our preachers? How are our spiritual leaders being held? Do they just have the Cadillac? You know what I'm saying? Is that all you got? Or what is their tithing? I know they're asking us to tithe. How are they tithing? Yeah. So I think that, you know, there's a whole bunch of people that we have to bring in, and I think we have to understand. I see it in my neighborhood, you know, and I've lived definitively in the hood in Crown Heights, in Brooklyn. You know, women who you've seen this, just nasty to you. You know, you walk in, you just trying to pay for the milk. And they just nasty to you, right? For no reason. And you're right? And you like this, what happened? I just want to pay for the milk. I'm not trying to rob it. Maybe last week. I'm just trying to pay for the milk, right? And it's depression, that anger, that rage is a depression.
Well, me and Tracy talked about this because, as you all know, and whatever woman in here who needs to fill out their child application, the Hartford folks in here, don't leave out this session without seeing Carla, one of the young Voices of Women of Color, let them sign you up. But what we're learning while we're working on the Smart Choice project in the schools, Tracy yesterday had to deal with a school, I won't say which one it was. And the young lady, I'm sitting on one couch and we're typing up some stuff, and she's on the other couch trying to talk to the sister, and the sister must have just had a bad day. And she was going at Tracy hard and slammed the phone. I called back and I said to Tracy, if we are the Voices of Women of Color and we recognize that our plate is full, then it is our job to wheel that sister back in and let her know that we here to make her life easier for this moment.
That's right.
And that today is the day that you are not confronted with confrontation. You is confronted with an alliance, a friend, a partner. What do you need from me? Right? So we start going through that. She's still yelling. I still working with her, right? About 3 minutes in it. Now Tracy all up in her school next Tuesday. She's sorry. She been a fan of the Voices of Women of Color. She remember we was in Sands passing out flyers and she want to come out. So I think that we forget sometimes that the same frustration that we bear, that the same tired feet, back, same, oh my God, red envelope from CNLP, you know, the sting under the door, that we all have that.
And so depending on the time of the day, right? And in some cases, you done been disrespected 13 times of the day, and it's this 14th time that you just don't want to deal with it. So we have to learn to be patient, right? I'm learning this. I'm getting a lot better. I've been practicing. I've like, you know, I think it's the swimming 4 times a week, thanks to Troy Stewart down there. But I think that we have to remember that we have an obligation too, to will each other back in, and that when this sister is being defensive, that we don't react, and when we do react, it's in compassion, right?
This is, you know, I actually don't work for Essence anymore, but for years I worked for Essence and then produced Essence Music Festival with Susan Taylor, who's one of my greatest mentors. And what Susan showed me time and time again, not through word but through action, was, you know, it's grace. We're not going to embrace it every day. Right. Let me just tell you something. You're not going to be graceful every day. I don't care how close you are to your God. I'll be like, oh, praying, meditating, and you know, you're not going to have it every day. But I think the more you talk about it and demand it of yourself and of your children around you and of the people around you, I've watched Susan. When you walk in New Orleans with Susan Taylor, it is, I can't tell you, you know, she's like the diplomat of the black community. You can't go 2 feet without people stopping, and we're trying to get the program started on time and everything else. Oh, let me just take a picture with you, Miss Taylor. Let me just say blah, blah. And I've watched her take every picture and be lovely, and I'm freaking out because I'm knowing this is what this is costing us, and we got to get on time. And she just flowed, and somehow it all works out. It all works out as a lesson when we were talking today, when we were pulling this together. I said it all in divine order. It'll all be fine. I learned that from Susan, like a grace and a peace, like to believe in us and believe that if we choose kindness, it will reward you. Kindness is its own reward. Yes. You know, and so when sisters eventually do choose to do a volunteer, like they may not know at first that is also its own reward. It's healing. That service is a healing. You know, when people go in the rooms, the 12-step rooms, and service is part of it. I'm not a 12-stepper, by the way, but you know, but I do believe that service is its own reward. But people have to learn that when they've been in service their whole life with no reward, no love, no support. They have to learn that and see that and feel that.
Well, that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about too, Asha, is because a lot of my old CBO friends and radical friends and different tables I have had the privilege, and they have had the privilege of me sitting at. I no longer wish, or you know, the Voices of Women of Color, the women I wish that I run with, no longer wish to be charitable in ways that we choose not to be charitable.
I agree with you.
Oftentimes we have people that come in our communities attached to funding. Okay, and they're gonna come in and they're gonna organize us and they're gonna get us together and they're gonna, oh, we need y'all to come and could y'all help us with outreach? Can you volunteer? Right. And after we done pass out all their flyers and everything, and we go to start dropping people off at the end of the night, 4 of the houses' lights is cut off, 3 of the houses' phones is cut off.
You know, it's the curse of being qualified. You know, there's a person in your office who they always do the best work, and so they keep getting more work put on them. You know that person that finally have a breakdown, and when they can't come in for 3 weeks because they collapse of exhaustion, everything falls apart. We all know that woman. Maybe we've been that woman. So I believe in people getting paid.
Me too.
So now I also believe that service is a part. So I get paid for what I do. My service is with children. I attend godchildren. I keep kids all the time. I run with kids, and anybody I work for knows you don't know who I should going to show up in the office with. It might be Nisa, who knows how to be in office. It might be some little bad kid who doesn't. But I run with children. That's my service to my community, to my sisters who have to work full time on a different kind of schedule than I do. I keep people's kids.
Well, one of the things we
so it's like finding the service that people can do, but it doesn't mean. But doing service does not mean don't get paid. Also, you understand what I'm saying? Like you can do both, and we should do both. Right? One is for our spirit, the other is for our light bill.
That's right.
You understand?
In New Haven, I have a perfect example. Now, in New Haven, no one even talked about prisoners, even cared about prisoners until I started bringing up the conversation. Right. I've been doing it for years, working on prison reform, all of that kind of stuff. Even had a big role in getting prison reentry into our city.
Yes.
Okay, now that it's there, they had a job, a paying job, $61,000 a year.
Didn't offer it to you.
No, I actually applied for it. You know who got it? A young Yale, white Yale student who just got out of school. Now, what does she know about what we need when we get out of prison? Because you probably don't even know anybody in prison. But that's who gets the job. See, I've been doing it for years. So when you talk about service, yeah, I love what I do. But I thought, well, this is an opportunity to actually get paid for what I do. Right. But somehow, when it's a paying job, then they can always find somebody else to do the job. Right. And when they gave it to the student, within 3 days, she was calling me to ask, could she sit down and talk with me? That's what I told her. I said, no longer am I going to be giving all this information out and then somebody else get a job.
Amen. Amen on that.
I said, the only way I'll come in and sit down and talk now will be as a consultant.
That's right. That's
like you said, service is my reward. I've been doing it for nothing. But when a job comes, I'm not tossing that away because it's a paying job.
That's what I want. Like, you know, I want to get an opinion of our wonderful elderly women because
Jerry don't like that.
Well, our senior. I'm trying to be polite because I really wanted to say our grams in the room. You know what I mean?
Our more experienced women of color.
Because it's like you know, we do all the brunt of the work. We struggle. It don't matter, you know, if you are a woman of color, you learn how to survive. But y'all learned how to survive on a totally different level.
Yeah.
And so you see the things that we're talking about, we're struggling with, and you seen how our communities have been ripped apart. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yes,
listen, in my own family, I've had family members, sons, gotten in trouble, have gone to, been incarcerated, and so forth and so on. But I used to go and visit them. Then I just started to say, wait a minute, this is not how I brought you up. When I came up, there probably was drugs around, but I didn't know nothing about it. And I worked for a company, CBS, the news television station. I know how the drugs got into the country because that was my job to put that survey out. Who brought the drugs in? You want to know who brought them in?
Tell me.
Executives of high levels.
Let them know.
They had the money to do it.
That's right.
And they thought this was going to be a way to get these young black people incarcerated, killing up one another. Then we going to take over again.
And it worked.
Yes, it did.
And
It sure did.
And so that brings us. So, Auntie, you been here long enough to say that. It can't bet. Now nobody call my show because I tell them your phone number if they want to debate that now. But she raised something about the petition, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little more about that.
I started a petition with a person that I'm related to that is incarcerated right now, and we're trying to strengthen family bonds because there's so many African Americans that are incarcerated right now, and there's a lot of children that are involved in that, and they don't have access to go and visit them. Transportation's a problem. Also, when you go there, it's a problem. The COs make it very difficult. Right now at Cheshire, I can speak on behalf of that prison because I go there to visit. They have put up a white line across the table so that you cannot hold hands. The children, if a little baby is sitting on the table, the COs will yell across the room and tell them to put that baby down. The father is not allowed to hold the baby during the visit.
So, Candy, isn't that a contact visit?
Yes, that's supposed to be a contact visit. So right now we have we're starting up a petition, and we also have a lawsuit that is getting ready to be formed because it is also violating our religious right because we're not able to pray. And I just think it's inhumane that they're not able to.
Well, I know Carla is working with you, and we need to be a part of making sure that we're a part of this petition and get behind you on this and make sure we can provide the support, because I'm telling you,
in New Haven also.
We all have somebody in our family who is in jail. So at any moment, we all could be confronted with not being able to visit our loved ones. This is why the Voices of Women of Color decided education and women in incarceration would be our issues, because clearly they're linkage.
There are all these other countries that offer conjugal visits. They understand and realize the importance of family bonds, and that will help reduce the them going back in, because if they have a family to return to, they're not going to commit crimes, right?
Yes.
So
Connecticut had it at one time.
Yes, they did.
Way back when I was young, and I was part of this group. It was Citizens for Humanized and Criminal Justice. I was a part of that group, and that was one of the things we were able to get in Connecticut, conjugal visits. But with everything, you know, they'll give something to you, and then little by little take it back, and if you don't say nothing about it, before you know, you're going to have it's gone. Because that was one of the things we did have in Connecticut at one time.
What she's working on, there's a group that are Better Ways working with, and they're trying to change sentence modifications as well, but they're also want to have a conversation with DOC about the no contact visits at McDougal. So if it's happening in Cheshire, it's happening at McDougal, it's happening in Enfield, I'm going to say grandma, because
I wonder if it's happening in
so if it's happening, but see the thing, and it's happening in Niantic, so it's kind of like, but wait a minute, but the thing is, they're saying it's not a law, it's DOC policy. It is, the policy saying it's a safety issue, and when it comes down to security, it's like, it's not debatable. But I'm saying, and everybody else in this room is saying, the people we are working with is saying, it's debatable.
Yeah, it is
It is very much so debatable on a higher level.
Because my thing is, you know, my son is in Cheshire, and a contact visit to me means that you hug each other, you can hold hands during that visit. So I take my granddaughter to go see it, and Candy's right, there's a white line. That's not that's non-contact visit. Even though you can't hold hands, you can't hug. So how is that a contact visit? You know, non-contact is behind glass. When you have a contact visit, you should be able to hug. He should be able to hold his daughter, hug his son. But that's not so at Cheshire.
But
so
there's nothing humane about prison systems, period, anyway.
There you go.
You're right.
Prisons are the most inhumane system that we have around here. And they definitely don't recognize us as human beings. Never really did in America anyway. So they're not going to change it now. So if they ever thought of us as human beings like them, then they would see the importance of us being able to hold our loved ones, hug them, you know, even not putting them in prison way out, so we can't even get to see them.